INFJs and INTJs. What are their similarities and differences? In this video, we're going to go through all of the things that make these types them. So let's get into it. INFJs and INTJs are very similar personality types, but there are some key differences between their decision making and their processing. The main differences come from their judging functions, their thinking and feeling functions. If you think of that, obviously makes sense, INFJ versus INTJ, and how they make decisions. And it really influences what strategies and paths that they choose to take. Whether or not they're going to go down a certain path really relies on their thinking and feeling functions. But there's a little bit of a difference to everything, so let's take a look at all of their different cognition. For decision making, both types, they make decisions based on what they want in their future, what they want for their future. They're looking at their path, they're looking at their strategy, how they're going to get there, where they're going. Can I do this? Can I do that? Could I do that? Could I do that? And trying to analyze which path is the best, trying to find that ideal, way forward. And by analyzing this best path, it's the best way to achieve their goals that are related to their passions, the things they want out of life, the things they want to achieve, their wishes, their fantasies. And this is how INFJs and INTJs generally make decisions. They prioritize that freedom, that creative freedom, that license to do things that are original, new, things that they care about, they're passionate about. And they want to follow their gut intuition. They want to follow that gut. If it's telling them, I kind of want this more, this is more what aligns with my character, they're going to go in that direction because that's important to them, to have a unique character. They don't just want to do what other people are doing or do what's normal. They want to do something that they want, what their soul wants. And this is very important for INFJs and INTJs, that they follow their soul, they follow that, because that gut that's leading them forward is focused on achieving their goals. So that's very important for INFJs and INTJs. But when it comes to their emotions, it's slightly different, and these emotions do impact their decision making overall, and what things they want, what things they're passionate about, what things they want to create kind of are informed by their emotional and intellectual thinking as well. INFJs, they regulate emotions externally through extroverted feelings, so they're looking for, to connect to other people's feelings. They're looking for other people's values. What do people value? What do people feel about this? Do people like this? Do people not like this? Okay, people hate when others do that. People love when people do that. And then they modulate their values based on the majority, that kind of social environment they're in, of what the people around them value. Whereas INTJs are a little different. They regulate their emotions more internally with introverted feeling. They care more about figuring out their own opinions, their own perspectives, what things they like or dislike. And this is why, if you're in a friend group, INFJs, they're going to, have that kind tone. They're going to have more of a warm perspective, because they don't want to hurt other people's feelings. They want to make people feel good. If someone says they like a movie but they don't really like it, they'll just say, yeah, that movie has a lot of good things. They'll find external good things to kind of endorse the other person's feelings and values and opinions. Whereas the INTJ isn't going to care as much about other people's feelings or opinions. They're going to say, your opinion's wrong, that movie sucked, I didn't like it. So that's a big difference between them. Whereas the INTJ is going to be more authentic with what they like and dislike. The INFJ isn't going to be as authentic because they don't care as much. They see that as kind of unimportant, and INFJ doesn't care if they like the movie or not socially. They're like, I don't really care if they liked it. That's great. They're more focused on making other people happy. Whereas the INTJ, they care a bit more about their authentic opinion because they want to express that. INFJs in general are a little bit more skeptical with emotions. They might assume things are bad, assume they're bad, assume other people might do bad things, and have kind of that pessimism with their values, and be very, accurate in trying to figure out what's really good, what's really bad, what's more ethical, what's unethical, what's moral, what's immoral. Whereas INTJs are more optimistic with their emotions. They assume they're good. They assume their values are good. They assume other people, while their FE trickster has some pessimism, in general, they're more just generally optimistic. They might not necessarily think other people are good because they have low FE, but they're just generally more optimistic with their emotions. They're not going to be super hard on their feelings, super hard on how they feel. They're going to like their emotions. They're going to want to express their opinions and their principles. So while INFJs are, the F type, INTJs are the ones that have more internal feelings and actually want to express their feelings more. So that's something to note. Then when it comes to the thinking, INTJs, they regulate ideas more externally with extroverted thinking. So INTJs, they're more focused on understanding what other people think instead of themselves. They want to understand other people's thinking. They want to get other people's feedback, other people's ideas, their logic, and try to learn from multiple different sources and figure out what's really true based on that. Whereas I should say INFJs, they regulate their ideas internally with introverted thinking. So INFJs have TI. They're more focused on regulating their own ideas, figuring out what they think is true, taking, the information and trying to logically analyze it. Whereas INTJs are much more willing to ask everybody what they think to try and get all of those sources to figure out what's most likely true. INTJs in general, they're more skeptical with thinking in general. They assume things are untrue. So kind of like how feeling is reversed. INTJs, they're a little bit more skeptical. They're going to assume things are untrue. Things, they're going to be, not believing everything they hear. They're not going to think things are automatically accurate. They're going to try and analyze that very rationally. Whereas INFJs are a bit more optimistic with their thinking. They're more likely to assume things are true, which can lead to sometimes being gullible, but it also means they're very curious. They're very open-minded. They're willing to hear lots of different perspectives, even if they're controversial, think them through, try to understand them, and try to come to that logical conclusion. Whereas INTJs, it's a little bit harder to get past those intellectual gates, but sometimes they can miss out on things that are true as well. So there's lots of different pros and cons to these perspectives, and these really inform their decisions. When it comes to INFJs, when they're making decisions, they want to be honest. They want to say things that are true. They want to be authentic with their thoughts, whereas INTJs don't care as much about being authentic in that way. They like hearing what other people think and trying to understand that. And when INFJs are making decisions, they want to make ethical decisions, things that align with the truth to them. Whereas INTJs, they want to make rational decisions, things that align with their values and their FI, but also things that just make sense rationally. So yeah, some different perspectives there. When it comes to their sensory functions, their sensing, both types have a lot of pessimism towards their sensory experiences, and even the experiences that they give other, they're a little bit apprehensive and insecure. They dislike doing the same thing over and over, doing what's normal, doing what's been done before. It's just not as exciting as what's creative and new to them. They don't want to be forced to do things because that's not exciting. They don't want to be obligated. They don't want to have to be loyal to certain things and just follow along. They want to be the leaders. They want to be the innovators. That's very important to INFJs and INTJs. They both dislike physical restrictions that stop their soul path, things that get in their way, their body's restrictions, restrictions from other people. They just don't want restrictions in general that are going to stop them from doing what they want to do, and these wants being informed by those different ethical or rational decision-making processes. That's very, very similar between both of these types. When it comes to their shadow, we talked a little bit about it, but we'll go more in depth. Both of these types, they're very similar. They have any nemesis. They worry about what can go wrong. They can be very paranoid. INFJs and INTJs can see a lot of negative possibilities, things that can get in the way of their path. Like I said, they have anti-hero. They're very heroic with their direction, where they're going. So their nemesis, what they're worried about, is what other people are going to do. Things that will get away in their path. Things that will get in the way of their direction. And so that's what they're both very worried about. And when we go down to their more critical functions, INTJs are very hard on their intellect. They're very self-critical with them being wrong and being stupid. And they can be really hard on themselves and think that they're unintelligent. And INFJs do that with their feelings. They can be very hard on their self-worth and feel bad about themselves and feel like they're worthless. So both of these types can be seen as being very perfectionistic and overachieving and very self-critical because they're kind of similar in that way, just with different functions. INFJs, they don't necessarily care about being respectable or rich or famous or having all this glory or being thought highly from others. And INTJs, they don't care about being as likable. They don't care about having everyone love them and adore them. They don't care as much because that's just their trickster function. Whereas INTJs, they do love, money, power, glory, respect, regard. And INFJs, they do like when people like and value and appreciate them and when they make people feel happy. So it's a slight difference in their decision making as well. Both of these types are very similar in their introverted sensing demon, and that they can adopt bad habits without too much thought. They can often absorb the habits of other people through their extroverted sensing and kind of adopt those, and often have habits they're not even thinking about. They're too focused on their passion, their direction, where they're going in life, their future, to really be too concerned about what they're doing in the moment. They kind of can often ignore that very easily. So final thoughts, INFJs, they make decisions on an ethical basis of doing things that help other people. If it's not helping someone, they're not necessarily going to want to make it a big part of their long-term plans. INTJs do it on a rational basis. If it's not sensible, if it's not smart, if it's not going to make people respect them, they're not necessarily going to want to integrate that into their plans either. INFJs, they want to be liked. INTJs, they want to be cool. It's kind of a difference in them. INFJs want everyone to really appreciate them, whereas INTJs, they just want everyone to think they're awesome. INFJs, they may embarrass themselves sometimes because they're not that worried about their reputation, but INTJs may sometimes piss people off sometimes because they're being controversial and they're saying their opinions very honestly, and that might make people with different feelings dislike them. But overall, both of these types follow their vision, they're very dedicated to their path, and they do have a grand plan for their life, just with different reasons behind it. So I hope this explains a little bit about INFJs and INTJs, their similarities and their differences. If you enjoyed, leave a comment down below and subscribe as well, as it helps the channel, and I hope you all have a great day.